Namaste, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the upcoming total lunar eclipse in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra in sidereal Aquarius, which is going to take place on 7th or 8th of September, depending on your time zone. So at the end of this fortnight, a very special fortnight, which is sacred to Lord Ganesha, the remover of obstacles, the moon will become fully eclipsed in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, just 3 degrees away from Rahu. Now, normally, this particular full moon is actually very, very special because it marks the ending of one very special fortnight and beginning of another really special fortnight. We actually have at this autumn time of the year, every single year, 3 really special fortnights occurring in a sequence. And it's quite interesting to actually understand this sequence first, just for a little bit more context, because it will help you understand also why this upcoming full moon or total lunar eclipse is so special and why this entire eclipse season this year is so unique. Now, what was happening in this fortnight that just passed? So on the 4th lunar day of this bright fortnight, we had a great festival known as Ganesh Chaturthi, or Appearance Day of Lord Ganesha, which normally is celebrated all the way up to this particular full moon in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra that we are going to talk about today. Therefore, this entire fortnight in which we are right now is considered to be very sacred to Lord Ganesha, very special to Lord Ganesha. And who is Lord Ganesha, first of all? Lord Ganesha, or Ganapati, is first and foremost the son of the goddess, the son of Shakti, the son of divine Mother Nature herself, which is why Lord Ganesha is also known as the presiding deity of our root chakra or earth element in our energy body. Root chakra is also the place where dormant Shakti or Kundalini Shakti in our energy body resides, and Lord Ganesha is known as her divine guardian. Lord Ganesha, therefore, is always worshipped as the very first in every prayer because he removes all obstacles, firstly from our mind, because our mind limits us so much sometimes. And not just this verbal mind I'm talking here about, also the non-verbal mind, where all the unconscious obstacles, unconscious traumas are being stored. Lord Ganesha actually, if you look really deeply at his symbolism, the beheaded son of Parvati who received the head of an elephant as his head actually represents this more implicit part of our mind where lots of unknown and incomprehensible obstacles often dwell. Because if we have an obstacle in our life or a problem that we can name, that we can understand, very likely we will be able also to find a solution for it. However, some obstacles in our life, we do not fully understand them. We do not know why things are the way they are, because so many obstacles that we experience come from our past karmas, come from our unconscious mind, and we can't necessarily always grasp them enough to be able to actually transform them or find solution for them. Therefore, we always begin our prayers with prayer to Lord Ganapati so he can help us actually overcome those obstacles that are unknown, especially. Those obstacles which are beyond our knowledge, beyond our capacity to transcend. So traditionally, this entire lunar fortnight in which we are right now is dedicated to Lord Ganesha, this divine guardian of Shakti, divine mother, who at the same time helps us to purify ourselves and remove all obstacles on our path. Then traditionally in a Vedic year, once this fortnight completes, after the full moon in one of the Bhadrapada Nakshatras, Purva Bhadrapada or Uttara Bhadrapada, Purva Bhadrapada this year, what commences is another deeply purifying fortnight known as Pitri Paksha, or fortnight of the ancestors. The dark fortnight during which it is believed some of our ancestors actually visit the earth, and at the same time some of our own past makes itself more known to us. It is believed that in this dark fortnight we have greater connection with our ancestors, and therefore more of our ancestral karma also leaks into our present life. And it's very interesting and symbolic that traditionally this Pitri Paksha, this dark fortnight on the northern hemisphere, always coincides with autumn season, when trees are also losing their leaves, kind of reminding us, or rather nature itself reminding us, that we too have to honor our past, honor our ancestors, honor the roots that we come from, but at the same time, allow ourselves to not necessarily repeat the past, but learn from the past and grow from the past. Which is why every year, Pitri Paksha is actually the period to both honor the past, but also let go of the past, consolidate what is old, integrate the past experience, and grow out of it, rather than being stuck in it. So this particular year, it's so incredibly significant that this Pitri Paksha, this fortnight of the ancestors, is actually nested in between two eclipses. It will begin with this total lunar eclipse in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, and it will end with partial solar eclipse in the opposite part of the zodiac. So it's very, very interesting that this fortnight of the ancestors is nested in between the eclipses this year, because that in itself indicates the nature of this eclipse season, which is all about facing our past and some of the most difficult experiences in our past, some of the most, you could say, triggering karmas, and actually really growing out of it, growing beyond it, learning from it and integrating it so that we can become more fuller beings rather than being limited by our past. And then usually what always comes after Pitri Paksha is the Devi Paksha, also known as Navaratri, the 9 sacred nights of Divine Mother, which commence immediately after the culmination of Pitri Paksha. So these 3 fortnights, they always come in a sequence. Firstly, we have fortnight sacred to Ganesha, the remover of obstacles, the known and especially the unknown obstacles. Then the fortnight of the ancestors, when we are inspired to face our past and heal our past. And once we removed the obstacles from our mind and made the effort to heal the past, this is when comes the time of the goddess, time of Shakti to awaken, the transformative power inside of us, the power to transform, the power to grow, the power to embody the divinity. So it's always a very beautiful and sacred time. And of course, if eclipses happen to occur within this time period, they will always amplify the already very transformational energy. And I do believe that especially this year, we will get to feel it even with greater intensity than usual. Because as many of you have noticed already, this first half of this year was very, very intense with previous eclipses. That intensity in a way will re-emerge now with total lunar eclipse in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. Because as many of you know, Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is a very fierce and volatile lunar mansion. It's an intense and fiery lunar mansion, like a lightning. And whenever a lightning enters into our lives, what is the best thing we can do is to ground this lightning, which is why any form of grounding practices will be very helpful for us in this period. Somatic practices, yoga, spending time in nature, anything that works for you. Because we all may feel in this period more irritated than usual. We may all feel more frustrated than usual. Some old anger and rage even may reappear. Some old untamed chaos may reappear. Some symptoms in our physical bodies may reappear. And all of that will be just the symptoms of some unresolved past and traumas that are making themselves known and calling for our attention in this period. So we may experience many unexplainable and intense feelings. And of course, in time like that, it's very important that we take very good care of ourselves. And rather than being very reactive in face of all those feelings, trying to enrich our daily life, our daily practice with more grounding practices. Because the worst thing you can do when a total lunar eclipse of that very fierce nature is approaching is to just succumb to that frustration, to that irritation, to that impatience, and make some very rash decisions that you will regret later. The best thing you can do is, as much as you can, postpone any rash decisions. Give yourself time. Give yourself time to truly process everything before you react. Process your feelings, process your emotions before you say something that you may regret. Process your feelings and emotions before you make any decision that you may regret. Because Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra naturally is a very, very volatile one and may awaken a lot of impulsiveness and frustration inside of us. And that's a very important thing to really, take into consideration this time, because as Sun and Moon will be in opposite places in the zodiac at the same time in the D20 chart of spiritual progress, known as Vimshamsha chart, both Sun and Moon at the peak of this lunar eclipse are going to occupy the amshas or divisions of goddess called Raudri, the Shakti of Rudra or Lord Shiva and presiding deity of anger itself. So anger in particular may re-emerge in big quantities in many of us in this period. Sometimes it may be experienced more as impatience or frustration, and sometimes as rage and aggression. And of course, our job during eclipse like that is not to suppress all of that, because it makes itself known and re-emerges for a reason, and that is for us to process it and release it and be free of it, not necessarily to suppress it. So what I'm trying to say is that this period, although very transformational, really needs to be approached with a lot of balance. And this is very interesting, Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is known to be presided by deity known as Aja Ekapada, which Aja literally means unborn, divine principle. Ekapada means one-footed. And when you stand on one leg, it's sometimes really hard to find balance, right? You're gonna keep balancing from left to right, from front to back, and it's sometimes really hard to find this perfect balance. Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is exactly like that. It calls you to find this perfect balance without falling into any extreme, because the moment you're caught up in any extreme, its energy becomes very, very volatile. So it's a very, I would say, delicate time period that requires a lot of wisdom from us. And at the same time, it is a period that I believe is going to also grant us a lot of wisdom. Because as much as Rahu and Moon will be meeting so closely together in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, interestingly, Purva Bhadrapada is the star of Jupiter. Jupiter right now in the sky dwells in another nakshatra of his own, Punarvasu. And from that nakshatra, Jupiter will be casting a very direct aspect, almost exact aspect towards Rahu and towards Moon during the total lunar eclipse, which is such a blessing because Jupiter, the planet of divine wisdom, the planet which dispels the darkness of confusion and delusion, is known in Vedic astrology as the only planet that can actually control Rahu. So it's a huge blessing that Jupiter will be occupying a very similar degree in Gemini that Rahu occupies in Aquarius during the total lunar eclipse itself, which also signifies that although it might be quite a volatile lunar fortnight, at the same time, what it will bless us with is unlocking some inherent wisdom and guidance from deep within us that we didn't even knew was there. And that will be the blessing of the total lunar eclipse. Because often when we face some of the hardest and most chaotic parts of ourselves, is that the deepest wisdom emerges. Realizations emerge that help us grow and that help us outgrow our current situation and become truly better version of ourselves. Which is particularly symbolic because Jupiter during that total lunar eclipse will be occupying Punarvasu Nakshatra, which is known as the star of hope and return of light, while Rahu and Moon will meet in Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra, which is the star of death, symbolic death, purification, and removal. So we all will be in some ways called to let some old part of us die, to allow ourselves to go through grief that perhaps we didn't allow ourselves to go through in the past. And very often from that very grief, from that symbolic death, so much knowledge can be born. Not without a reason, Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is known as the nakshatra of cremation grounds. And what is a cremation ground, symbolically, in our mind? It's this place where something dies and goes away. It's this liminal space in our psychology, the space in between the worlds, the space in between the death of the old self and before the birth of the new self, which is again exactly what Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra is about, as it bridges two sidereal signs in Vedic astrology, Aquarius and Pisces. And of course, always whenever we go through that symbolic death, through that symbolic space in between, it never really feels comfortable because it's the space in which you already know that the old self, the old you, is something that is no longer an option, but the new self didn't fully emerge yet. Which is precisely why, periods like that are so powerful for healing. And at the same time, they require from us so much more care, so much more practice, so much more sadhana, so that we don't end up overpowered by those big feelings that emerge, so that we may stay grounded, so that this lightening that comes truly serves us as the guiding light rather than just burning everything down. And of course, the lightning, once grounded, can become a source of power, can become a source of light and wisdom. But for that, we also need to make our effort to stay very grounded and very stable. So that will be our effort to do. in this lunar fortnight. Remember that every eclipse, especially total eclipse, even though it's always quite volatile time, but it almost always comes with some gift too. It helps us to outgrow the old. It helps us to purify ourselves and unburden ourselves from some of our karmas. So it's a beautiful time also for intensifying our spiritual practice. It's a beautiful time also for stepping back from the world for this very short period of time and just allowing ourselves to stay more anchored in our true self, in our soul. So I wish you that during this entire period, you manage to find a little bit more time for yourself, a little bit more time for meditation, a little bit more time for the divine, so that you may truly benefit from it. Namaste.